So where we are underneath the Duomo now was the site of an earlier basilica called Santa Reparata, and after excavations in 1965 to 73, you can visit, which we will, the remains of this church and 3 remodeled versions of it. It was built as a vow, in response to a vow made in thanks for the Christian victory over the king of the Goths, and then reconstructed during the Carolingian area, which I believe might have been Charlemagne. I have to check my history. It's interesting that there are public payphones splattered around in the oddest places. And here we begin to see some of the artifacts apparently from that era. I'll pan just so we have a little sense of what we're going to be roaming through. And another section, hopefully with explanations. Look at the character of the museum. It's interesting how they've taken these remains and put walkways of cement around them in a very neat pattern. It's interesting, I don't know anything about this, but it's interesting to see the pretty colors, a pink and a light blue. Now they may be faded colors, but it would attest to a sense and appreciation of a light-hearted beauty, perhaps, or as usual, as Scott the archaeologist reading more into it than should be. I find little things like this belt buckle to be fascinating because I wish we had yet the technology to decipher all that this belt buckle has encountered by the person who wore it. Imagine when the person first commissioned it or saw it in a small old shop and picking it out amongst others like we would pick out things today, and then taking pride in wearing it on different occasions. And looking at this sword, we can only imagine what tales of gore or pomp and circumstance it might have witnessed and played a role in. Are the deaths of humans on this sword? As I walk through here, try to imagine what it was like when these stones saw the light of day last, and when they saw the light of day first. Mosaics were very typical of Roman floors. Imagine entire floors with this beautiful but original. As a lawyer sees nuances in words and sentences and phrases, an archaeologist of this period would see nuances in, to me, what is just an interesting old piece of nondescript artwork. Were these carved in or pressed in? Is that some of the Roman cement? Is this a Byzantium influence that we're seeing? Particularly the design on the bottom. But Christian, to say the least. There's the cross. And what is the significance of some of these graphics there? It looks like a stylized bunch of grapes or else a strawberry. This may be some terrazzo type surface. Here we're in some kind of small room, somewhat reminiscent of the kivas of the Anasazi, that little bench. The columns here synonymous with the either columns or log columns used to hold up the top of the kiva. Is this little stone a precursor of the bigger stones that we see in the cathedral floors as crypts. And imagine when people walked these stairs daily. A pretty column with a very interesting base. Now I suspect that now I'm standing in the aisle of the original basilica, and these pillars, the one on the left being a remnant perhaps of the original. Other than the bases, the rest are just steel posts, but this will give us a sense of the dimension. I'm guessing these are early crypt covers that would have sat in the floor. Apparently the people were most respectful of these, and they don't appear to be heavily worn from walking on, although this one may be. Again, the attempt of humans to cheat death's ultimate victory. This looks like a reliquary. It may contain the bones of someone important. And it does say reparata, so it would have been, as it should in this museum, have been a part of that church, whether it was originally in this place. I don't know. Here we can just make out some of the original wall painting. I've often found it curious that people get into the hobby, if you will, of genealogy, but I don't know that it's any different than an archaeologist who has an obsessive fascination with the culture he's studying or she's studying, particularly as they learn more and more tidbits and search for more and more. A little remnant of a sculptured stone. Presumably this is a pre-Renaissance statue, and yet looking at her face, it certainly reflects animation, emotion, beauty for sure. Not just an iconic face. Presumably this is a pre-Renaissance statue, and yet looking at her face, it certainly reflects animation, emotion, beauty for sure. Not just an iconic face. Inaccessible to us, but apparently excavations go much deeper. Here, a interesting column corner, if you will. Here is an interesting crucifix, classic medieval, of course, but so small and with pictures so detailed that I would have to assume that it would have been expected to have been viewed from about the distance that we're at now, or even closer. This looks like some kind of original fresco. Medieval, Mary on the left, presumably St. John on the right. I wonder if they had sarcophaguses, and this might have been a cover of one, or was this a wall feature? Here we can apparently see the depth of the fresco. In this instance, quite thin, unless this has been filled in, and if it's been, and it may have been. These two panels appear to be simply graphics. What's interesting is this middle portion an overlay of the other? Can't make out any discernible design other than the graphic. Pretty colors. Imagine the arrogance of my scrutinizing the work of this artist. And could he have imagined that it would be scrutinized? This one is a bit different because it's surrounded by a border of a different stone, a green, probably Tuscan marble. And the marble face itself, the white portion, again seems of much higher quality and therefore of much greater expense in creating than these, which look like they're a softer stone. If in fact not cement, but I think they're just a softer stone. Perhaps this hole is the remnant of a floor crypt. I'm just guessing.